All right, happy March. I hope everybody's doing well. Let's get the technical out of the way. First of all, can everybody hear me? It's been a minute since I've streamed, and so I think I've got everything set back up the way that I had it set before. But if someone could just give a quick shout in the comments, I think everything is working, but it's up to you guys. All right, we can see me. Perfect. Hey, you know what? Thanks for hanging out. The beginning of this year was awesome. We had January, and then basically January until last week just got super busy. And I mentioned this already, and so I just couldn't be on here last month. And so I appreciate you guys sticking it out and waiting for me. So I'm super happy to be back down here and working on all my projects. And I thought that tonight there would be nothing more thrilling than throwing rocks and doing it a bit of ballasting. Now, where that came from is that I finally am back working on my station platforms, and in order to get the car barn put in and the passenger platforms, I need to start ballasting, and so now I'm into full ballasting mode. A couple weeks ago I painted everything, which I cannot get over what a tremendous transformation that has made for the layout, and it feels a lot more done, and now I'm getting a little bit hyper-focused into the details. And so tonight, I thought I would go about doing a bit of ballasting. And part of the reason is that I like it. Like, I find it's not a thing, but for certain, there's a number of people who just hate it and will never do it. I find it really mellow and relaxing, and so I thought, you know what I'll do is I'll sit down and I'll go through the process that I'm using, and maybe the approach will resonate with you guys, and maybe it'll give you, I don't know, some hint or tip or something like that. Because certainly I know that people have screwed up ballasting. I probably should say hello to people, and I have to admit, this chat window is flying past me, so I'm going to try to quickly just catch some people, some names, and say good night or good evening, and then we'll get into the business of trying to throw some rocks, as someone said, like curling. So right off the bat, Brian Ferguson, good evening. You were in there this morning when I got the stream set up. Mr. M&M Rails, Dave Hughes, Trackside Mike, CP Whiskey Creek, Todd Armstrong, Steve M. Anderson, Rio Grande Stream, George McCormick from Glasgow, Scotland. Good morning or good evening to you. I think it's morning there for you. Dave Hughes, I Run Games and Trains, who's apparently listening in tonight. Go VR, go home. Good evening, Kris. Pine Valley Railroad. Curly Express, good evening. Kraus Rails, good evening to you, buddy. Dundas Junction, good evening, James. Steve B.N. Ironwood. Floyd, M&M. RDGK, good evening to you, Floyd. Anthony Bourdain, or Anthony Borden, pardon me. Trackside Mike, keep it on the tracks, buddy. Mustache Mike. FGLK Paul, good evening. Oh my goodness, and I think that's all I can keep parsing. Oh, GRRFY, the pirate. And I think for the timing, oh, YouTube 7048 and Stormy Productions. I hope that's everybody. Okay, I'll keep checking in. So, ballasting. So, originally I had set up tonight because I was going to ballast a certain section of track, and then I realized I hadn't actually painted that track. So I moved the setup. So I have a short section of track that's been painted, and I'm now going to ballast it. First of all, for painting, I just use rattle cans. So there is a tin of leather flat spray paint, and I just use that. I'm a little less fussy about the color than maybe I should be, but my number one priority is get the side of the rails hit with some paint so they're not shiny, and it minimizes the size of Cody rail. It looks pretty good. And so it's just brown painted ties. And I think the first thing that I'll do is, why don't we just go over what I'm going to use tonight, because maybe that's a detail that gets a little bit skipped over. So first of all, in terms of ballast size and color, so I'm just going to be using the Woodland Scenics Fine Ballast. So this is N Scale, and this looks really good to me. And I'm going to make a blend of just straight up cinders and their fine ballast, which they just call gray. I never thought that I would spend time rail fanning and going down and standing beside the tracks to stare at the color of the ballast. But definitely in the area that I'm modeling, there's a lot of what seems to be cinder-based or cinder-colored ballast. So I'm doing a bit of a blend so that it's not dead looking, it's just not one sort of solid black. And I would say probably what I'm doing is for every, when I say half cup, I mean this cup. For every one of these little cups of ballast, I'm probably putting in maybe a tablespoon of the light ballast. I just feel like when you look at it, it looks a little more interesting. And definitely when I've been out looking at ballast around the areas that I'm thinking about modeling or using as an inspiration, that's the color. So you can see that tablespoon full of the light ballast in the bottom, and the rest is just the cinders. And I'll just give it a bit of a stir about here. And really what it does is it just creates, it's going to be hard to see, it just gives it something to look at. And I'll probably drop like an India ink wash on top of all of this, or a brown wash or something later, and it'll sort of bring the two together. All right, so that's it. That ballast is totally done. Accidentally deballast sincerely in your tracks. I tend to airbrush my ballast, so it doesn't matter what color I use. Exactly. So I want to, and in this case, this looks good. Certainly the station platforms, which I really can't easily show you tonight, but I'm certainly going to be showing it to you. Looks pretty good. I like the color of the ballast. So number one, there's the ballast. That'll be well more than enough for what I'm going to use tonight. Second part is, and this is sort of interesting, so the binding agents, glues and stuff. First thing I would mention is I picked up one of these sprayers. I don't know what it's called. I'll hold it up here. Be careful you don't get the salt and pepper effect. Understood. This sprayer I picked up on Amazon. Just check out the way that it's built. And the difference with this one is it's sort of like a pressurized sprayer. And what it does is that if you're familiar with going to, let's say, the dollar store and getting some sprayers or using an old Windex bottle or something, it really fires out a heavy stream of water. And that definitely blows the ballast around like it moves your scenery. The way that this one works is that when you pull the trigger, it's pressurizing it and it lets out a really fine mist. And one pull of the trigger and it just continues like a cloud. And so this, if you hold it high enough, just puts a gentle rain down on everything and it doesn't actually move anything around. Number one. The second thing is this is just regular tap water in here, but I did add 1 drop of Dawn dish soap. And that's because the enemy of all this ballasting is surface tension. And so that's just, I read about that 35 or 40 years ago on Model Railroader. So there's just a bit of dish soap in that so that it doesn't have the water pool up. An atomizer, yes, thank you very much, Mustache Mike. It's an atomizer. So look for that. This thing was like $12 on Amazon. Like, they're not worth anything. And maybe you could find it in different stores, but I went on Amazon and found it. Second part is how I'm going to attach it. So there is definitely different schools of thought of this one. I'm going to just go with the cheapest and most practical way, which is I just use white glue and water. Now, definitely there is a push to use matte medium and water, or probably the best version would be called matte medium and isopropyl alcohol. The advantage of matte medium as an adhesive is that it doesn't reactivate with water. So in this case, I'm going to fix everything in place with the white glue and water mix. And in future, let's say I drowned it again with some water, theoretically that glue could let go, using white glue, that could let go and you could soften it back up. And certainly I've seen that in the past when people, let's say, try to save their switches. They soak down an old layout that they want to recoup and they pull it up. And that's totally fine. Matte medium, so it doesn't reactivate. White glue will reactivate. Isopropyl alcohol, the net advantage of using isopropyl alcohol as to dilute your adhesive is that it has zero surface tension, which is really helpful as well because you don't want any pooling. Again, I've done this way for a long time. I'm not advocating that this is the best way to do things. It just works really well for me. And I did the entire yard and it's rock solid, and I've never had any problem, at least. So the white glue, I'm going to do about 2/3 water to 1/3 of the glue. It seems to work well for what I've done in the past. And so I'm going to call that this line here. About like that. So it is runny. Again, this is what I dumped on the layout last weekend. It dried in 24 hours, and I haven't had any problems with it. And I picked up these inexpensive pipettes. These are actually from Michaels. I used to use eyedroppers, and I kept dropping them, and typically I would buy glass ones and they explode. The pipettes from Michaels aren't worth anything. Couple bucks for 5 or 6, maybe it was $3 or $4. And so this is quite literally very watery. And again, I haven't had any problems with it. I appreciate that there is going to be a lot of different ways to do this. It's just the way that I've continually done it. I haven't had any cracking problems. So yeah. All right, so that is, I would say, pretty well mixed at this point. The only difference is that I'm going to add a little touch of Dawn dish detergent. So give me 1 second and I'll show you what the area that we're working on tonight. We're going to be hanging out in this area. We did some wall painting over there. This is my workshop bottle of Dawn soap. Okay, Mr. Pipette cereal, making a shopping list. And not even a drop of this. Again, all it does is break up the surface tension so that you hopefully don't get any pooling. And again, you could use isopropyl alcohol. You could add that to here. You know what? The only thing I have a problem with is that isopropyl alcohol, for the amount that I go through it cleaning my airbrush, it feels like it gets expensive, and that maybe is the wrong thing to cheap out on, but that's where I'm at. John Train, I have been collecting N Scale stuff and I'm planning on a suitcase level. I love this. All right, so that's done. It doesn't get all frothy, and what I've learned about myself in the past is I have this old camping mug, and this goes inside here because that's a lot less tippy. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get one last little bit of white glue, because I'm going to show you the approach that I like is to ballast, or is to put straight white glue on the shoulders of the track. It stops it from running down, and I'm not saying it's a unique thing to do, it's just that it allows me to move a little more quickly. All right, so where does that leave us? We have straight white glue that we're going to use. You'll see in a second to get the shoulder sort of set up. We've got our ballast, which, to the salt and pepper comment, let's see, it's not bad at all. It's just a little bit of flecking in there. And then finally our adhesive, which is just the 2/3 water to 1/3 white glue and another drop of dish soap. And we've got the atomizer, not a spray bottle, with, again, just some regular tap water and a drop of dish soap in that as well. So let's move over to the other part of the layout and start getting stuff set up and see how I can do. All right, so atomizer, ballast, M&M rails, all will be revealed. I'll show you how I use the atomizer in a second. So how does that shot look in terms of, can you see stuff? So interestingly, I just noticed that I put stuff down by the track and the camera's frozen. So let's see if I can't get that back. There we go. Okay, back over here. This is, welcome to Ceylon Denny. All right, so I'll do my best to work between talking and showing what I'm up to over here. And so the order of operations that I like, that works well for me, is that I usually start on the shoulders and work my way to the middle. Now, I understand 100% if people go the opposite direction, where they start in the middle and work their way out, and it seems to make sense because then the ballast, the excess ballast rolls down the shoulders. I just find that this works a little bit better for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in on painting up a little bit of white glue just onto the shoulders. And it's not a lot. It's just enough to basically give it, the ballast, something to stick to. And I'm also not going to be very precious about this either. All right, so there's a bit on there. I feel like the music's a bit loud. Let me just knock that down a bit. There we go. Okay. So there I've got a length done up, and I'm just going to go in with a bit of ballast. And I like the plastic cups, and I'm just going to do along the shoulder to start. It's kind of a weird angle here. Tapping as we go. And so the net benefit, as you can see, it doesn't roll down. If you've done it before and you find it comes off the edge and rolls down and exposes the edge of cork, that's the only reason I've bothered to put the glue down first, because I find it eliminated that. I'm going to go back and add some more, but at least at this point, if I walked away, the corner of the roadbed is built up with some ballast. And so I'm going to go along here and quickly do the rest of this. Got a little bit on the top of the ties there, which I don't want. And this is a good example here where I'm currently brushing that I should have done a better job to knock the edge off the roadbed. I did try to go around and quickly sand. That's the area where when you tear the cork roadbed apart, it creates this sort of, well, it's a torn, sharp edge. And sometimes it can be a little difficult to make the ballast stick to that particular area. And I'll make sure I get the far edge of this done as well. All right, there is the white glue in place. Yeah, the Kato Unitrack, the ballast doesn't seem to have a lot of problems on it at all. All right, so I'm going to go to the far edge here. And this is quite a valley here, which I'll fill up with ballast. Okay, so you can probably see, because this has a torn edge, you can see that sort of ridge there. So again, the approach I take is that I've got the sides of the roadbed with a bit of white glue and the ballast down. I'm going to go back in now, and what I'm going to do now is add ballast on top of the ties beside the track and between the edge of the roadbed. So basically now we're going to fill up the gap in between. And I don't need any glue here. And I'm specifically going to try to make sure that I dump it onto the ties, but not down the middle. I think you can see I've got that covered up quite a bit there. I'm just going to go and, oh, that was too much. No problem, there's a great big gully in there. Now I think HO ballast behaves a little differently. I can't decide. A lot of times I see the HO ballast and I feel like it's mildly oversized. So not perfect by any means. I was talking to my friend over at the South Down switching layout, and he was lamenting about how he is quite a perfectionist when it comes to ballasting, and so he generally can do an inch or so an evening. I'm a little more into the utility of getting it done. So I'm going to add a little bit more just down the center of this. Okay. So glue on the edges, and then I've piled the ballast up over the ties against the outside rails. And now I'm just going to, what I find works is I'm just going to take my thumb and run it along. And what it's going to do is that's going to sort of spit it over the edge back into the place that I've already got the white glue down. And again, it's worthwhile. Again, out there rail fanning and starting to take pictures of ballast, you realize that there are some rails that are completely exposed. There are some that are deeply ballasted. There are some that the rails have ballast on top of them. And so that's like that. Now, a couple of these spots, I'll just go along with my finger. And I'm not really care that it's pulled up a little bit of the ground foam. Okay, so let's see how that's looking so far. Back over to the chat window. Trackside Mike, I use a makeup brush too. Oh, a powder coat powder for fishing lures make a Gris and N Scale ballast. Really fine. Okay. I've also seen people use certainly grout. Okay, so it looks like the camera view is doing okay. So now, with the sides done, I'm going to go down the middle, and this is where I'm going to be a little more spare. And again, this is just the way that I find it works well. And so, sort of uneven. And in the past, what I've done is I've now usually taken my figure and scrub it back and forth to try to get it to seat. And what I've found is actually just pulling it in one direction just moves it along towards a place that's not necessarily ballasted. Now this is where you could definitely use a brush. I find that just pulling it along with my finger works pretty well. And if I don't put too much on, and I've got empty spaces between the ties or the sleepers, it just sort of works itself out. So that's sort of covered in. I'm not necessarily happy with this edge here. And for tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just build this up a little bit, but because the scenery isn't done around it, I would probably leave it there, and when I come back and maybe I'll do some static grass and some ground foam, that's when I would do another coat of ballast to try to blend it all together. But for the time being, I'm just going to, I'll put a little more in here to just smooth that edge out a little bit. Now I'm not going to worry about the odd little stray here. What I have found is that when you get this diluted glue on here and it sets up and it dries, it's quite strong. But that doesn't mean that if you can take your thumbnail and run it along the inside of the rails, it'll knock all the loose ballast that gets caught up away. Likewise, once it's dried and you pull your thumb down, it will also remove any sort of stray piece of ballast that's on top of the track. And so that is about 10 inches that I would call ballasted. I'm just going to run it back over here and see what's going on in the chat. Oh, you guys are talking about where you're from. What did I miss here? Don't forget a little bit of fine ground foam for vegetation. You know what? Let's do it up. I'm just making sure this is all mixed up. Let me see if I can find some blended turf and such. Let's see. I've got some coarse turf. And I'm really interested in using some static grass along this, but for the sake of this video, so I've got just some standard blended turf, which turned out to be a really amazing color that I used when I was just doing my real fast paint job on the layout to paint everything. In the bottle, it looks quite bright and quite green, but when you put this, and you realize it's got little bits of brown and a touch of like orange in it. When you put it on really thin, it transforms. It becomes a bit of a different color and it's really dead looking, which is great. And then I have just standard coarse turf light green. Oh, Kusmata, thank you very much. Very kind of you. I had a special groove in my thumbnail last time I did Ballast. Yeah, I also get a black finger from it as well. Well, I get a black finger from it as well. Okay, back over there. Let's just sort of season this a little bit. I'm just also going to give the camera a little move, so bear with me here. Let's see how that looks. Maybe just a bit more. How are we doing there? Okay, that looks good. So, I mean, we're going to go really spare here. I'm going to add, I mean, hardly any. That's even too much. Blended turf along the edge. That's enough of that. Again, Class A railroad, there would be absolutely nothing. They would weed spray everything to death. But for sake of this, I'm going to just add the most minor amount. And this is a little bit of the coarse ground foam. Again, I would probably prefer to use static grass, but whatever. Maybe just a touch of weeds here for something to do. And a couple down there. Not being precious about it. Okay, so we've got just a little bit of built-up vegetation along this. Thank you very much, Mustache Mike, as well. A lot of kindness out here tonight. I appreciate it. Erma Lagasse says you should season at the start and re-season before serving. 100%. Okay. So, I think I saw Mark mention what is the atomizer for. So, in this case, you're probably familiar with using your diluted adhesive, which is what we've got here. And I just want to make sure if we can see where my fingertip is, which is the front of the ballast there. Yes, you can. Okay. So I followed the instructions. I've watched every video in the world. I take my diluted white glue and I put it on. And it's doing okay, but you'll see that it sort of runs all over the place and it piles up. And that's okay, and you've probably found if you try doing this that you're washing out as you get to the edges. So what needs to happen is that this needs to have zero surface tension, and that's where this comes in. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mist this down with some of this water. I'll be curious to see if we can see this. And everything here has had so many coats of paint that I'm not too worried about getting it wet. Now you can see that it pushed the ground foam around a little bit there. And so I'm just going to keep dousing this until you can see that the top of the ties are wet. So that's plenty wet. And it smells nice too. So in this case, because this is wet and that this has got a little bit of soap in it, which means there's no surface tension, it means that the surface tension there should be no surface tension when I apply my glue. And I'm going to start down the center of the rails. And so when I pipe this in, you can see how it just flows right out. It's not moving any of the ballast around. And that's going to sink right down in. And that extra mist of water is going to help move it around through capillary action. And then it's simply going away. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the glue right down the edge of the rails like this. And so the glue what makes sense to me is because I put it down the middle first, it's starting to seep under the rails. And then I come along the rail sides and it sort of picks up where it left off and it starts to make its way down the shoulder. And so I also do it in about 1 foot sections. So the center is done, the shoulder closest to the rails is done, and the last part is to just make sure that I finish it off like so. And you can definitely see the roadbed edge came out there a little bit. It did move it a little bit. I'll go back in there. Maybe I'll go back in there and finish that off with a little more ballast and a little more ground foam. Maybe I'll just grab this with a little bit of glue. A little bit there too. And so for all intents and purposes, that area is now taken care of. So let's see, okay. What is the plan to cut down the sheen you get from the white glue? So there won't be any sheen. It is so diluted, it's going to be absolutely matte. Same thing with matte medium would make you, matte medium is a greater guarantee, but because this is 1 part glue to 2 parts water, it has absolutely no sheen whatsoever. When I do some of my buildings, let's see here. So this was my little ITLA structure that I did. And one of the things I did with it is that I added some Scenic Express super leaves to the roof and around the edges to give it some vines. And I put a little bit of white glue on and I put these on. And then I also used the pipette with that same glue mixture to bond those to the top of it. And there's absolutely no shine from it whatsoever. So white glue definitely will have a sheen to it, but I find that when I water it down, I don't get that same sheen. YouTube, yeah, it should drive cleared. Weird, it looks purple on my screen until it soaks in. 100%. When you put white over black, you get a bluey color. So yes, you are seeing it correctly. It'll go flat black. Okay, mad camera effect? Absolutely. Trackside, how does the glue work with the turf? Okay, purple haze. So why is the glue soaking in and not rolling off? Okay, so it has to do with the fact that the spray that I put down, the atomized spray with the water that has a bit of the Dawn dish detergent in it, has no surface tension, right? So instead of forming like a droplet, as soon as it hits something that's sort of porous or absorbent, it just soaks right in. So you've definitely seen that you can put little droplets of water. So the soap breaks the surface tension, so instead of forming droplets, it soaks in. So because the ballast has been soaked and wet, as soon as you add the glue, it has nowhere to build up a little bubble and sit proud. It just automatically is absorbed into the rest of the water that's on there. And so that's why it just drops in and disappears. Let's see what we've got going on here. I might try the dish soap next time. Dish soap or rubbing alcohol also works well. What I like to use when gluing down ballast is something like a ketchup or mustard squeeze bottle. So Southpaw 737, 100%. I have tried that before, and because it's N scale and the ballast is so fine, I find I blew it out of place. Fresno Jason, Fresno Jason. Good evening. Surface tension. RDK Matt, this is how you spell it. M&M Rails. Oh, so you added soap to the water. Yes, the atomizer, I put a single drop of dish soap in it so that it has reduced surface tension as well. Fresno Jason Jet Dry works well too, 100%. Trackside Mike, soap and alcohol, 100%. Denny is going to do a house call, yes. Kraus Rails, is there a difference between water and soap and IPA? I don't think I'd wash parts of your body with IPA. Soap is a bit better for that. No, there's principally no difference in it. It's just that the water and soap is cheap and 100% available. Don't mix the alcohol and glue to save a step. A friend of mine tried that, M&M Rails. I seem to remember that you did that. Have you seen a photo of Ballast and Toronto line in different colors? I have actually. It moves as you go from sort of region to region. Southpaw runs HO. I miss with alcohol. Yeah, sorry. So Kris brings up a good point. Go via or go home. You can also mist with alcohol, and it has the exact same effect. It breaks up the surface tension, so when you put the glue on, it just absorbs right in. What I'm thinking here is that I should probably jump back over, and we will continue to do like another few feet. And I'll show you how I'm going to continue on. So let's head back over and I'll do a bit more here. So first of all, let me make sure I get the camera moved along here to the right spot. All right, how are we doing here? Maybe a bit too far. You can't see totally what I've got going on. How about that? Perfect. Okay. Another key point is do not touch. It is what it is. You can go back later and make some modifications and fix it later. Now is not the time to start fussing with it. Tap with your finger, let it be, and we'll sort it out later. Floyd Robbins, I use water and soap and alcohol in my baths. Right. So I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to be very mindful that under no circumstances am I going to get the brush with the white glue back into the ballast over here. I am going to leave a bit of space because I will pull up that ballast and it will look terrible. I've been very excited about this area too because I picked up some very inexpensive trees from Temu that sit somewhere between shrub and tree, or tree frames I should call them. And I can imagine that I'm going to be able to put like the autumn colored vines up the retaining walls. I'll get some trees and some bushes. And this is where putting this all down was a big step up for me because it started to look like a layout. All right. All right, there we go. So glue is down. So same as before, I'll start in on the outside of the banks of the roadbed. And in this case, I'm just going to carry it right on to the work I did the last round. All right, so there we go. Banks are done. Again, no touchy the wet stuff. Now I'll work on the outside of the ties, which will cascade down over the banks. Remembering again not to touch it. So a bit high here. And then the last and most important front edge is this one. I'm curious if anybody in the chat has ever used those acrylic ballast spreaders where you fill it and you drag it across the top of the rails. I've got a little white bit of something here. All right. And then the last step is I'm just going to a little bit more to the center. Now this is in a damp area, so I'm going to be careful. I could always come back there. I won't. And the overflow from doing the banks and stuff is filled in the center ties pretty well. I think it's still a little bit heavy down the center here, so I'm going to just And I'm tempted to go in there, but that's wet. Okay, let's see what's going on back over here in the chat. By the way, my cat is mesmerized by watching your giant hand. Has anyone used Woodland Scenic Ballast? Chris Scott. Well, good evening, Chris Scott. I have never seen other ballast available to me. I would say that in the 3 or 4 hobby shops that I've ever been able to make my way towards, I've never seen anything but Woodland Scenic Ballast. I have been given, I think it was crushed walnut shells or something at some point in time, but the problem with them is that as soon as you put down the glue, they just floated. So yeah, someone is 3D printed and one has got a resin one from Micromart for HO scale. I just got the 210 Texan and N Scale. I won't be changing. No, Mustache Mike. Agree. We all use Woodland Scenic Ballast. Let me see. It's called Ballast for a reason. You do it last. Oh dear. I'm doing it first, sort of. I use them as Scenic. Okay, so I haven't looked at Scenic Express Ballast, to be honest, because when I buy one of these liter containers, it lasts quite a long time. Woodland uses walnut, sorry, I've been told. Interesting. I don't doubt that it could use walnut shells. Huh. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is heavy. It's real stone. Okay. The one thing I haven't done tonight is I haven't dealt with any turnouts. And that's a special sort of agony, especially trying to get the points all cleared out. So I'm going to head back over and I'm going to get this thing drenched and set in place. So again, the next, let's say 10 inches here, I'm going to come in with the atomizer. And just get it good and wet. And so because that again has soap in it, rubbing alcohol would work perfectly fine too. You can see none of the water pooled on top. It automatically soaked into it. So now when I come back and apply my purple glue, it'll just soak right down in along with it. Now, the one thing I will say is that when this is all said and done, absolutely you have to clean the rails. And for better or for worse, I do like using a bright boy. I realize that not everyone, there's a lot of school of thought that you shouldn't be using a bright boy because it's an abrasive and it puts, is it fair to say scratches or scars the track, and then unpolished track oxidizes easier because it creates little shorts. I think the wisdom is there. And so certainly if a bright boy isn't the way to go for you, then don't use it. I haven't had any issues with it. So we're going to really load it up on the edge here and it's going to work its way down. Okay, and that has got all adhesive on it. All right, what do we got back here in the chat? I use the Woodland Scenic pads as they're a little less abrasive but get the job done. BNSF Fan 01, I know you have to order it, but you'd probably like the Arizona Rock and Minerals Ballast. Good stuff. That's great to know. I just use an angle grinder. Yeah, exactly the same. With a buffing wheel, no problem. I've been told if you use a Bright Boy, run a stainless steel washer over the track afterwards. Sean Pennywise Miser. So I assume that's because it sort of burnishes the track smooth again? Belt sander, yep. Curly Express, I can't even run trains. Mr. Curly, yes, I went and I saw that you're doing both a cleanup and a significant change, adding a front panel, I think, to your layout. I spent the money at the last Altoona PA show this past September for the N Scale CMX cleaning car. Nice. I use a special rubber abrasive pad that I use on commutators. Okay, so that's, yeah. Oh, GR Griffey, I just use aluminum foil and rub it over the track. I've never heard that. Red erasers to clean the track, yes. Oh, copper track before nickel server. Save money on ballast. There's plenty of videos how to make your own personal. Just keep buying mine. Pink pearl eraser. I've also heard of using an eraser for erasable ballpoint pens. Yeah, for sure. It's the one that was like blue and then sandpaper on the other side. Yeah. Hobbies with Matt. I thought walnut shells were flammable. Wasn't that part of the problem that Ken Patterson ran into? I thought it had to do with the foam, but yeah. Good point. Let me just go back over here for a second. So you can see that the glue is very quickly dissipating into the ballast. And if I pull the camera back, to the first section that we did, it's almost completely soaked in, and I'll post a picture tomorrow so you can see what the color looks like. There will absolutely be no sheen to it at all. Mr. Curly Express, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Although I still haven't had any issues with needing to clean my Kato track. Looks good. What I will say, so with this, the cleaning car, the downside of the cleaning car with this one is that with that microfine bit of glue, even the water with the soap in it, nothing will run. Like, that is an unrunnable piece of track. So you do have to do something to pull that off. If you want to put isopropyl alcohol on a rag and run it down over the top of the rails, I'm sure that would work. My Bright Boy is laying around here somewhere. My Bright Boy, I've had it for so long and I've used it so much, it's actually just shiny. So it's not even abrasive anymore. It just looks like it's chrome. I used an art eraser for sure. So yeah, I think, and so let me see. So we talked tonight, and let's say realistically, did I spend maybe half an hour doing that? Maybe not even. And so I find that certainly I can come down here and let's say do 5 feet of double track mainline with really no big problem. I mean, I certainly turn on other people's streams and other people's videos. I put them on and I sit over here and I just get into a really zen place, and then pretty quickly, a couple nights a week doing it, you wind up with ballasted track. And I like to think that it runs better. I'm sure it makes zero difference. I'm sure that there's no net effect of being better, but I do like doing it. The only thing I would say to do in my case is that I did tack my track down, and that's for some previous experiences where I glued my track and it wasn't for me because I needed to make changes. Before you do the ballast though, just drop your head down or a mirror and make sure your track is straight, because once it's glued in place with the ballast, you're not unkinking kinked track. Let me see, aluminum foil followed by a tiny smear of no-ox grease is a good combo. Good to know. I haven't seen the no-ox, but I've heard of it. BNSF, if you use alcohol to clean the glue off, you would still want to clean the second time with like an electronics type cleaner as well. Okay, good to know. Most excellent. So right. So yeah, it was actually 15 degrees Celsius today. And the last time I was streaming, which was in January, in the weeks following that last stream, it was about minus 30 here. And so we now have seen a 45-degree temperature shift. And you can feel the mood lifting. Definitely there is a lot more sunlight for sure. And even though it's nicer to be outside, it's a little easier to be down here as well. So I'm looking forward to being able to lean into getting some stuff done. RDK, how's the concrete progress going? Almost all of it's painted. Almost all of the concrete's painted here. And this weekend I'm heading down to the Big Smoke into Toronto. Hopefully we'll get to catch a few trains. I know the following weekend I'm going to bum around and take a look at some trains. And even though I try to commit to what my next project is on a live stream, I think the next thing I'm going to be doing while I'm working on the ballasting, that's a maintenance thing, is finally building my Union Station, which that's coming out of a Wathers kit. And that's going to probably be the next major project I have. And then I think if I had my druthers, I would be working on the bridge right there. I need to do that. And I need to put a bridge over here. And I've got a station, and then it goes all to hell. But yeah, so there you go. That is how I put down ballast. I appreciate all of the feedback. Like, this was a wonderful stream. And I appreciate all of the feedback. I mean, I've seen a number of things in here that I didn't necessarily know. Definitely, I remember reading about no-ox. It's a polarizing topic, to say the least. But the aluminum foil is an amazing trick. I can imagine myself putting that on a tongue depressor and just moving it along. Let me see. Union Station. Are you attending any layout tours coming up? I haven't really, I haven't thought about going to a lot of the layout tours this year. I probably will definitely check out the double headers again. If anybody else wants to come hang out and do a tour of those. And maybe this time I will try to hit up some HO scale layouts, because I always try to support the N Scale brethren and deal with them. So where does that leave us? So I would say that that was a pretty productive night. I think it's a good place to stop, because I don't want to keep moving down. The next couple feet get into some of these switches and my Aldershot platforms, and I need to get the platforms glued in place. There's a couple of things I need to work out in my head. I keep going over it. So this is a good place to stop. Thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight. It's great to be able to see you guys in March. I'm looking forward to April. For everybody out there, please take care. Have a good night, and I'll see you next time.